Daniel Mitchell had always been a man of routine. He rose early, brewed strong black coffee, and read the Dallas Morning News before heading to his office downtown. At 38, he had built a stable life, a good job as a financial advisor, a comfortable house in the suburbs, and a marriage that, until recently, he believed was strong. His wife, Claire, was the love of his life, or at least she had been. They met in college, and Daniel had been captivated by her fiery spirit, her laughter, the way she lit up a room. For 8 years of marriage, he tried to give her everything she asked for: trips, gifts, and a lifestyle she could show off to her friends. But lately, something had changed. Claire no longer smiled the way she used to. She avoided his gaze during dinner, brushed off his attempts at conversation, and guarded her phone like it was made of gold. At first, Daniel blamed himself. Maybe he wasn't exciting enough. Maybe routine had made him dull. He doubled his efforts, planning surprise date nights and weekends away, but Claire only grew more distant. Then came the night that changed everything. The spark of suspicion. It was a Tuesday, late in spring. Daniel had been waiting for Claire to come home for dinner. She had said she'd be back by 7, but when the clock struck 9, he began to worry. He called her phone. No answer. By the time she finally walked in at nearly midnight, he was sitting on the couch, his untouched dinner plate still on the table. Her hair was perfectly styled, her dress immaculate, and she smelled faintly of expensive perfume. "Where were you?" Daniel asked, keeping his tone calm though his chest felt tight. Claire rolled her eyes as she tossed her handbag onto the couch. "Out. I tried calling you," he pressed gently. "You didn't answer." She poured herself a glass of wine, refusing to meet his eyes. "I was busy." Daniel stood. "Claire, I just need to know where you were. It's not like you to stay out this late without telling me." That's when she snapped. She spun around, her eyes blazing, and spat out the words that would haunt him for weeks. "Where I go is none of your business." Daniel froze. Her voice was sharp, almost cruel. The words cut deeper than she probably intended. None of his business. He was her husband. He had vowed to share his life with her, to be her partner in everything. And now she was telling him that her time, her whereabouts, her life, were not his concern. She brushed past him and went upstairs, leaving him standing in the living room, shattered. The quiet shift. Daniel lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling while Claire slept soundly beside him. He thought of their wedding day, her vows, the promises they made. He thought of the sacrifices he had made to give her the life she wanted. And now, she wanted secrecy, independence, freedom from him. But Daniel wasn't the type to shout, to throw things, or to beg. Instead, something inside him shifted. If Claire wanted her life to be none of his business, then he would make a choice. He would stop asking questions, stop demanding explanations. Instead, he would quietly find the truth for himself. Watching and waiting. The following weeks felt like a charade. Claire continued her late nights, often claiming she was meeting friends for drinks, or working late. She spoke less to Daniel, her laughter reserved for whoever lived on the other end of her buzzing phone. Daniel played along. He kissed her goodbye in the mornings, asked about her day in the evenings, and even cooked her favorite meals. But beneath the calm exterior, he was watching, waiting. Then came the opportunity. One Friday evening, Claire told him she was going to a girls' night with coworkers. She dressed elegantly, too elegantly, Daniel thought, and left without a backward glance. As soon as her car disappeared down the street, Daniel grabbed his keys and followed. The truth revealed. His heart pounded as he trailed her car through the winding Dallas roads. He kept a careful distance, not wanting her to notice. Finally, she pulled into the parking lot of a luxury downtown hotel. Daniel's chest tightened. He parked across the street and waited, his hands gripping the steering wheel. Moments later, another car pulled up beside hers. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a suit. Claire walked toward him with a smile Daniel hadn't seen in months. They embraced. Then, to Daniel's devastation, she kissed him. Daniel's world went silent. He watched as they disappeared into the lobby together. It was over. The doubts, the excuses, the late nights, They all made sense now. His wife wasn't just hiding something from him, she was betraying him. Silent resolve. For nearly an hour, Daniel sat in his car, staring at the glowing hotel entrance. Part of him wanted to storm inside, confront them both, demand answers. But another part of him, the quieter, steadier part, told him not to. Confrontation would only give Claire the chance to spin lies, to twist the story, to make him look like the villain. No, if she believed her life was none of his business, then he would stop making her his business at all. By the time Daniel drove home, he had already decided what to do. He would not scream, he would not beg, he would not fight for someone who had already chosen to betray him. Instead, he would plan. The beginning of the end. Over the next 3 weeks, Daniel played his role perfectly. He smiled when Claire came home late, kissed her on the cheek, and asked no questions. She grew bolder, convinced that he was oblivious. But behind the mask, Daniel was preparing. He met quietly with a lawyer. He reviewed his finances. He gathered evidence. And slowly, he built the foundation for the day he would finally reveal what he knew. He wasn't after revenge, not exactly. He wanted justice. He wanted her to understand that every choice has consequences, and that the man she dismissed as boring, predictable, and naive was far stronger than she ever realized. The calm before the storm. On the surface, everything seemed normal. They still shared dinners, still went grocery shopping together, still played with Max in the backyard. But beneath the surface, the marriage was already dead. Daniel knew that soon, very soon, the truth would come crashing down around her. For now, though, he waited. Patient, silent, calm. Because the moment Claire told him, "Where I go is none of your business," she had unknowingly signed the end of their marriage. 3 weeks after Daniel had discovered Claire's affair, the quiet storm he'd been brewing finally reached its peak. On the outside, he seemed unchanged, the same calm, steady husband who rarely raised his voice. But inside, he carried a truth that burned every time he looked at her. It was a Sunday morning. Sunlight streamed into the kitchen as Claire sat at the table, scrolling through her phone with a faint smirk. She barely acknowledged Daniel when he set a mug of coffee in front of her. "Claire," he said evenly, "we need to talk." She sighed, irritated. "About what now?" Daniel placed a manila folder on the table and slid it toward her. She frowned and opened it. Inside were neatly arranged documents. Bank statements, property records, and, most damning of all, photographs. Photographs of her and the man from the hotel. Holding hands, kissing, walking arm in arm. The blood drained from her face. "Daniel." He cut her off with a calmness that shook her more than shouting ever could. "I know. I've known for weeks. You said where you go is none of my business. So I made sure it won't be my business ever again." She flipped through the papers with trembling hands. Divorce documents. A prenuptial agreement she had long forgotten about. A financial breakdown that showed she had little claim to his assets. Her voice cracked. You're divorcing me." Daniel looked her in the eye, his expression steady. "Yes, I've given you 8 years of my life. I gave you loyalty, respect, and trust. You threw it away for a man who couldn't even bother to meet you anywhere but a hotel lobby." Claire's eyes welled with tears. "It was a mistake, Daniel." No," he said firmly. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is burning dinner. What you did was a choice. Over and over again. The collapse. Claire pushed the folder away, her hands shaking. "You can't just throw me out like this. I gave you years of my life." Daniel's jaw tightened. "And I gave you a home, stability, love. You repaid me with lies. The house is mine. I bought it before we married. The prenup protects everything I built. My lawyer will be in touch, but you should start looking for somewhere else to stay." Her tears turned into anger. "So that's it. You just cut me out of your life like I'm nothing." Daniel took a slow breath. "You already did that yourself. I'm just making it official." For the first time in years, he felt a sense of control. Not anger, not desperation, just clarity. Claire stood abruptly, knocking her chair back. "You'll regret this. You think you're better off without me. You'll be alone." Pathetic. But Daniel only shook his head. "No, Claire, you'll be alone. And that man you threw us away for. He's already gone. Her lips parted, stunned. What are you talking about? Daniel leaned back in his chair, his voice calm but firm. I had you followed. The last 3 times you went to meet him, he never showed. Do you know why? Because once he realized you had nothing to offer him but yourself, he disappeared. He was never in love with you, he was in love with the lifestyle he thought you had. Her face crumpled, realization crashing over her. After she left, Claire moved out within 2 weeks, defeated. The divorce went quickly, the prenuptial agreement held strong, and she walked away with almost nothing but her clothes and a few personal items. The man she had risked everything for didn't return her calls. By the time summer came, Claire was living in a small apartment across town, working extra shifts just to cover rent. Daniel, meanwhile, began to rebuild. He had always been cautious with money, investing quietly while Claire spent freely. Now, without her draining their accounts, his wealth grew rapidly. He expanded his investments, bought a new car, and took a trip to Colorado to hike the mountains he had always wanted to see. Most importantly, he found peace. The grocery store encounter. Months later, fate placed them in the same aisle of a grocery store. Daniel was reaching for a carton of eggs when he heard a hesitant voice behind him. Daniel. He turned. Claire stood there, thinner than before, her once flawless appearance worn down. She looked tired, older, like the weight of regret had carved itself into her face. Hi, she said softly. You look good. Daniel nodded politely. Thanks. How have you been? She gave a bitter laugh. Not great. I made a mistake. If I could go back. He cut her off gently, his voice firm but kind. Claire, the past is none of my business anymore. Her eyes widened at the words, recognizing the deliberate echo of what she had once said to him. Before she could reply, Daniel turned and walked away, pushing his cart toward the checkout. For the first time in months, he felt lighter. New beginnings. Life moved on. Daniel joined a hiking club, made new friends, and even began dating again. He found that love wasn't about drama or secrecy, it was about trust, companionship, and honesty. He often thought back to Claire, not with anger, but with a quiet sense of closure. She had made her choices. He had made his, and in the end, her words, "Where I go is none of your business," became the very key to his freedom. Moral. Trust is the foundation of any relationship. When one partner dismisses the other with secrecy and betrayal, they may believe they're gaining independence, but in reality, they're destroying the bond that makes a marriage whole. Daniel's strength wasn't in anger or revenge, but in dignity. He didn't scream, he didn't beg, he simply stepped away, reclaiming his life. Claire learned too late that betrayal doesn't just break hearts. It destroys futures. And Daniel's quiet, steady choice left her crushed, not because he punished her, but because he moved on without her.